In 1646, Pierre Lambert took up his position in Rouen, 3 years after the death of Louis XIII. Although King Louis XIV became king at the age of 4, Mazarin reigned undivided over the heart and decisions of the regent and of Austria. Rouen was the second city of the kingdom, but behind the prosperous facade of its business circles. For years, the city was facing an influx of newcomers. English lords sought to escape the revolution, and officers from Spain were imprisoned in the tower of the old palace. Above all, peasants from the surrounding countryside, who were ruined by the tax pressure, or were fleeing the famine and epidemics, arrived in large numbers. Jansenizing ideology was also on the rise. It is within this sensitive political, social, and religious context that Pierre Lambert becomes an advisor to the king in the Court of Aid. During the Fronde, a series of French civil wars, Rouen was pulled into political and social problems when the Duke of Longueville joined the rebellion on January 10, 1649. Since he was the advisor to the Court of Aid, Pierre Lambert was appointed as one of 3 delegates to divert tax revenue for the rebellion. At 25 years old, despite his age, it is evident that Pierre is already held in high esteem to be entrusted with this important mission of great responsibility. Pierre, along with 2 other delegates, are sent to Alençon and Caen in order to organize, in cooperation with the treasurers of France, the transferring of funds. Since John de Bernier was the French treasurer of Caen, it is strictly for professional reasons that Pierre Lambert will meet, for the first time, his future spiritual director. When the war and revolt settled, a sumptuous reception was given in honor of the king, queen, and the prime minister, who desired to ensure the fidelity of the province. Although the political position of Pierre Lambert is uncertain, like all of his colleagues from the sovereign courts, Pierre Lambert attends the dinner in the ranks of the notables. While continuing to fulfill his civil and charitable functions, he felt more and more attracted to the faithful people he frequented in church. He would often abandon Rouen to devote himself to the works of piety in Lower Normandy. For some time, he will feel restless in the world, and will draw more and more towards God alone. One day, Pierre was invited to a meeting that was being held to sign the wedding articles of a relative who was settling in Rouen. He went there on horseback, finely dressed. His horse was suddenly frightened and threw him into a stream, which left him in a real mess. At that moment, he remembered the fall of St. Paul and said to himself,
"There you are! Such vanity gets its just reward."
Although Pierre Lambert naturally liked to be well dressed, it pleased God to detach him from this vanity. And despite his attire, he had the courage to present himself in a poorly dressed state before those gathered. This fall, which he interpreted as a sign from heaven, provoked a true inner conversion in the young magistrate. Despite being disappointed by the vanities of this world, his properties and civil responsibilities kept him bound to the world. In 1663, he will find himself reflecting on this experience, and will write,
"I was engaged in the world and in public affairs at the persuasion of my relatives. I lived in a state of ingratitude towards God for some years. In His infinite mercy, when I was experiencing the greatest success, He gave me a disgust for creatures and called me to Himself. I was so deeply involved in the world and in business that however diligent I was, it took me 5 years to be free of it. Since then, the good Lord, having had compassion on His pure work in His hands, has led me little by little to the state of which I am."
Realizing how distant he was from the complete detachment he desired, Pierre Lambert, the magistrate, made a radical decision to transform his life. Ignoring the objections of his colleagues, he stepped away from his responsibilities, in 1654, at the end of the year, and left for the hermitage in Caen, to discern the will of God.